Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the latest episode of Taking Charge of My Cancer podcast. And I'm looking forward to this great conversation with Michael Moss. So, Michael is a head and neck cancer survivor. He started his career in print advertised sales for a small firm and eventually became a part owner and assisted in growing the business. As the business grew, he slowly transited to the management side, went back to school to achieve his MBA so the company will not outgrow him. And he eventually became the president and CEO and facilitated the sale of the company, which consisted of over 460 employees. Now retired, and his second bout with cancer back in 2012, identified as a throat cancer, was diagnosed 3 months after officially retiring. His next journey of treatment and healing was now underway, and little did he know that he would be undergoing to the biggest challenge of his life. So, Michael, thank you so much for being here with me and really looking forward for our conversation.
Good. Happy to be here, Julie. Happy to be here.
Great. So you want to tell us a little bit about your diagnosis and how did you find about your cancer?
Certainly. Well, I just retired 3 months. I was 62 years old. No, 60 years old. I apologize. And on my neck, actually, when shaving it, I would feel a bump. And that was very unusual. It turned out to be a swollen lymph node. But I said, okay, that's it. I'm going to go and see my doctor. So it was part of the Shan system. I went to see my visit. I actually was most impressed because I had phoned on a Monday. They said, well, he'll see you tomorrow. And I said, perfect. I go and see him. And he said to me, he looked down my mouth and he actually saw my tonsils and he thought one of them was black or not right. He said, I want to send you for a CT scan and we want to look at this. Would you stay here? I'll see if I can set up an appointment. I said, certainly. He came back in 10 minutes. He said, they'll see you if you like this afternoon. I said, sure. I went there the afternoon. The next morning, he phoned me to tell me they feel it's cancer. And
Wow.
it was from your tonsil. I said, really? He said, I made arrangements for you to see an ear, nose, and throat doctor the next week. I went to his office on Monday. He says it's most likely throat cancer, and your tonsil most likely is the source. So he said, we've got to take your tonsils out. Follow me? I followed him out of his office, turned the corner. He said to his assistant, set Michael up for tonsil removal Wednesday morning.
Oh, wow. That was fast.
And I go, whoa. She said, you can't. You're booked all day. He said, he'll be the first patient. Have me here before everybody else. Well, I went in there Wednesday. On the Wednesday, I did take out my tonsils, but it wasn't my back of the throat that was sore. It was my whole jaw. Everything was sore. And when I did the follow-up visit with him, 2 weeks later, he said, I put a lot of hurt on you looking for the source. The tonsil was not the source. So I looked and looked and looked. And I said, that explains why my jaw was really so sore. But anyhow, he picked up the phone and he phoned Dr. Mendenhall and saying, I got a patient. Will you see him? Yet Mendenhall said, certainly send him over. I went over that right after my visit with the doctor. And before I know it, Mendenhall had me scheduled for 6 weeks of surgery. Mendenhall's
Radiation oncologist.
Yeah, he said, I'm not worried about not finding the source because that happens sometimes. And most likely it shouldn't affect the outcome of this case. But right from now on, you have about an 85% chance of making it 5 years. I said, okay, let's get this thing underway. And that's how it all started.
Got you. Now, you mentioned when you send me your bio that your second bout with cancer, you want to tell me a little bit about your first bout?
First one, I was 37, and it was the testicular cancer. And it turned out to be that there's two types. There's one that spread and the one that are more isolated. And this one spread. And when I finally got diagnosed, I was on a vacation with my wife, and we were visiting a friend, a doctor that my wife worked with in England. And basically, once they took some x-rays, they said, you got to get home. He's pretty bad. So it was stage 4 cancer throughout my body. Pretty serious, but chemo had just been introduced into Canada no more than a year. And luckily the treatment, the cancer responded very positively against the treatment. But after 6 months of chemotherapy, I was, you might have said cured, but I went through the 5-year thing, and then I'm okay now.
Oh, wow, wow. So when you mentioned that you say stage 4 testicular cancer,
Yes.
so stage 4 means that has been spread out even distally, or was just very localized?
No, my lungs were completely white, completely white. My liver
Wow.
was infected. My kidneys were infected. My pancreas was infected. There wasn't too many parts that it had not spread to.
And you tell me that your last pet was all clear.
Well, that was almost 37 years ago, so I should be okay now. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Wow. That's amazing. And that was just through chemo. No immunotherapy, nothing else.
No, just the chemo. But the chemo at that time, I'm told, is very, very toxic, extremely toxic. Then I was reading the book on Lance Armstrong and his battle with cancer, testicular cancer as well. And when he got his diagnosis, not diagnosis, but when they were giving his treatment, he said, I had 4 cycles. That's only for the most severe cases. In my case, I got 6 cycles. Each cycle was 3 weeks. So it was extra long with extra toxic chemicals, but it did the trick.
Wow. Did you get any sequelas from it, from that chemotherapy back then? Like any neuropathy, any cancer-related fatigue? Did you
Um,
any leftovers from all of that?
yeah, I think there's a few challenges now that I've been aging that certainly would have those type of things. Neuropathy, some cases of it, at that time was supposed to affect your hearing. I feel my hearing is challenged somewhat. And the third is lungs. The lung capacity is not maybe what it could be or should be. But other than that, no, I've been holding up pretty good.
Excellent. Have you ever done any genetic testing to figure it out what
I
is?
think I think when I was having the throat cancer, uh, they did say, and actually the doctor said, you are no generic testing is when how it runs in the family, but he said just from the profile I've seen of you, your chances are you're going to get cancer again.
Okay,
And
gotcha.
he's the second source that told me that.
Okay, got you, got you. Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that. I did not even realize that. Even, we never talk about it when I treat you as you were facing
Yeah,
your throat cancer.
I
Uh,
know.
what type of resources do you use to help you to make decision about your treatments for both? Back then, 37, you guys in Canada, I mean, that was a long time ago, right?
Yep, right.
So even back then, and a lot of more like newer things and better things we do now to try to treat these cancers. But what resources do you use to help you?
I pretty much went with the physicians. My wife was a nurse. She had some connections, and we know of a few doctors. We maybe would pick their brain a little bit, but pretty well went with the advice of the physicians. And if they said, you got to do this, okay, let's do it. If you got to do that, we'll do it. Let's go. And that's we weren't trying to reinvent the wheel in any way. We pretty much went with the advice of our physicians.
Okay. Did you look into like learning more about your condition through something? Did you look into anything like as you were kind of going through these treatments, learning a little bit more what was happening with that?
Um, yes, my wife, she might have been on top of it, but even going through my first one, I was a little naive on that, but I felt that if I knew of it, I might not. Yeah, be standing up to it. And it was the same with the throat cancer. There was a little negativity about being, if I knew maybe what was all entailed, I might not fight as much as I wanted to, not knowing,
Mhm.
if that makes sense.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Sometimes it's better not to know than knowing too much, right?
You're right. You're right. You're right. That was the
So,
way I felt anyway.
yeah, will you be able to give us some three valuable tips that you learned about your journey with your diagnosis?
Happy to. I felt the first one that I think really helped me get through was I went from the belief it is what it is. Let's just go and get it fixed.
Mhm.
I mean, I wasn't going to dwell on it. I wasn't going to reflect back or say, woe is me. It is what it is. Let's just get it fixed. What do we have to do? That was number one. So I think attitude makes a huge difference on your healing and getting through the treatment.
Mhm.
I would say a second one, you family and friends that come through. They were a big help. There's a lot to be said about the prayer, and I said a lot of prayers. Third, then I just was trying to maintain and be strong. Just be mentally strong. Don't let this thing beat you up. Don't let it down. Just be strong. Darn it, you're going to come through this, and there's no question about it. You're just going to do it. So you be strong.
What did you use to help you to stay strong? Did you have any counseling? Did you exercise? What kind of things you feel that was a good injector of energy or positive thoughts or anything at all that, because it's easy to say, okay, man, this is getting me and I'm gonna get strong, but what do I use to, like, what do I get to get that strength to be able to go through it?
For me, it was the numbers. Um, I calculated I'm going to go 5, 6 weeks on radiation twice a day. But and then I would count each cycle, which meant pretty much worked down to 3% a day. That if I finish the first week, I'm 15% all the way finished. If I go 2 weeks, then I'm 30. And I kept the numbers, and it
Uh-huh.
just I knew I could see the end. I knew where I was. I knew I can do this. I can do this. So it was all self motivation. I imagine, but I wasn't going to let it beat me.
Right. So when we talk a little bit earlier, we you mentioned something about like what kind of things that you went through all this process, and if you have to go back, is anything in particular like you feel like I wish I knew ABC, I wish I did this and that? Is anything you mentioned something about you wish
Yeah.
you knew more about details? So would you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Well, They're all good points, and I would be gladly tell. I wish I would have ate more. The doctor says, eat, 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 eat. In my particular case, maybe I lost 70 pounds. It's not a diet I'd recommend. But if we're talking throat cancer or all cancers, throat cancer, they were very generous with the OxyContin. And so after a while, you are getting into be a bit of a zone as far as too much medication, but you got to keep going. I wish I would have followed more on the exercises. Sometimes you're just too worn out to do the physical therapy, but these are the activities the physical therapist wants you to do. They want you to yawn, to drink liquids, to do all these things when you come back after 2 sessions of radiation. Sometimes, but they are very important. You don't shortchange them. I don't care. I mean, that I could have been more aggressive. I was okay, but I could have been better. So I say eat more, then they exercise more. There was one other item that you kind of learned by yourself, and that was the more medication they give you, the more it binds you up. And it was hard to go to the bathroom. And then you would have awfully days where you're just so bulked up. But I finally, the more medicine they give you, milk of magnesia, just so you can be regular. And that I learned that more well into the session. I just wish I would have known it sooner, but that would be the little tip I would pass on.
Great.
Listen to your therapist and eat more.
Okay, great. Besides exercises, is any other kind of activities that help you when you were going through your cancer treatments? Do you still continue? Well, you are already retired.
Yeah, no, I didn't have work to do, but I had, some activities. It helps that we had a pet, so I could walk the dog, and I could do some walking. And just those exercises that the physical therapist would give you regarding the mouth, or between, putting the pegs in there, yawning and swallowing, and all these exercises. And when you sit down for a meal, and probably the last 2 or 3 weeks,
Mm-hmm.
I was a good hour, an hour and a half to eat. And I'm still saying eat more. You could only get so much down.
Yeah.
So you don't have a lot of time for that. And then, as I indicated in my particular case, I was a little bit of a zombie because of the amount of OxyContin they were giving me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I answered that.
No, that was perfect. So one thing I usually, and I don't know if you remember that, but I get you. We have you guys come here bit, and you're like super fatigued because this cancer-related fatigue that
Yes.
happens with the accumulation of the radiation or the chemotherapy. And then you come see us, and it's like, guess what? We're gonna get on the bike, and we're gonna get your heart rate up, and we're gonna be doing all this strength training, and you're just looking at us like, are you out of your mind, right? I just want to lie in the bed, and you just work on my neck and help me with the swelling, and let's cut it for the day because I don't want to do anything. And then the answer that we usually get is like, no, you're not doing that yet. You're gonna earn it, right? You're gonna start working out, and you're gonna feel better. So I always say to patients, I would say 99.9% of the time after you exercise, you improve your energy levels because you're taking into these endorphins and serotonins, and you just start feeling better. And it's increasing oxygen, and it's enhancing your treatments with radiation or chemo. But sometimes they're like, yeah, right, whatever you say. But what was your experience with that, if you remember that?
No, absolutely. I would maybe tease you a bit about the exercise. Can't we do this or that? But I mean, you're absolutely right. I'm happy I did them. I was thrilled, and I did feel better. But you are bang on when you're coming in there.
Yeah.
You're lower than a snake's belly in a wagon wheel rut.
That's a good way to call it. What was a painful lesson that you learned along the way?
What was the lesson that I learned? You can't take things for granted. You've got to get some hiccups, and you've just got to learn to, okay, pull up the pads and let's get on it and let's get it done. Let's get better so I can go back to being a normal life. It's yeah, and you've got to embrace it and just as I say, it is what it is. Let's just get better. Let's go on and do what we have to do to get better. And you'll be surprised how much easier it is to get things to get better.
Okay, great. What does it mean to advocate for yourself, and how can people do that?
I think that to create the ability to speak up for yourself, ask questions, and don't be afraid to ask. What's wrong? This is hurting. That's not hurting. How do I get this? But just be upfront. Just speak up. I found the whole SHANS system was superb. And anytime I did want to ask for a question, they were always there. It was, in my case, I had a very good experience, very good, and the whole operations more than I could have ever hoped for. But they never, they couldn't. But just speak up and ask. If you're not feeling well, tell them you're not feeling well. I don't know how many times, just in the very end, I wouldn't be hydrated enough. And they say, if you're not hydrated, come in, we'll give you hydration. We'll get you feeling better. And they did that. I did it two or three times, and it did make a world of difference. So I
Excellent.
say, don't be afraid to ask. Speak up.
Yep, that's exactly true. And not only that, but I know that you say you kind of like back then when you have your initial cancer, at 37, you just go in more naive, right? So you really
Yeah.
like shock and oh my God, what I'm gonna do. So sometimes you just kind of go for what the doctors say. And if the doctors say that, then we just go ahead and do that. And you get diagnosed at 37 with the stage 4 cancer. That has to be very scary. But sometimes, it's good to always ask questions, but as well search for other information. If you're not too convinced for what you're hearing, just get a second opinion, get a third opinion. It is know that you shouldn't feel rushed into making decisions because, your cancer more likely is not going to change for 2 weeks to a 3 week to something different,
Oh,
right? So take a little bit of your time, put the brakes up, and then it's like, okay, is this what I want to do? Right? Is this what makes sense to me? And again, don't be afraid to search for another physician, another institution if you don't feel comfortable. There's nothing wrong with that. We always say here, if you don't feel comfortable and you want to go get a second opinion from somewhere else, absolutely. We get second opinions, third opinions from other places, from patients who've been going through other places. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's a good thing for you to see, okay, what makes sense for me? What do I feel comfortable with? So it's important.
right. No, I agree.
Okay. How can people find you?
Well, other than my email, I'd be happy to give that, but I'm really not on any social media. I'm not,
That's all right. That's okay. And I will put your email on the show notes. So if somebody
if,
wants to send you a message or talk to you about your experience, they can do that. But thank you for that.
and if they can send me that email and they wish to talk more, I'd be happy to give them my phone number to talk.
Excellent. Perfect. What books or podcasts will you recommend for the audience and why?
Well, there was one book, the podcast I'm very new to as well, so I couldn't give a podcast name for sure, for per se. But the one book I read that was really quite enlightening for me was called Happiness. And it's the art of living with peace, confidence, and joy, by Douglas Smith. And it really helps you the joy, the pursuit of happiness, and what are the things you might have to change in your life to get a better outlook on what this great earth is all about. So that I would recommend, and I haven't got any other books right at the tip of my head.
That's okay. That's okay. That was very good. And what is one question that you wish I would have asked you and you will have answered before I let you go?
I tried to give some thought to that one, and I thought that you asked a lot of very good questions, so I don't have another question.
So this is already what? This was in 2012, right?
2012. I'm 12 years, actually today,
Oh,
or in my,
wow.
12 years today.
Wow. Happy anniversary for being a
Thank you.
survivor for the second time. Do you still getting like follow-ups or no anymore? Or is anybody keeping an eye on you or how that's working?
No, I do. In my particular case for the throat cancer, there's a lot of issues that keep coming and they keep cropping up. So I go to a therapist ever so often, and they help me with more exercises. I see a personal trainer every week, and she puts me through exercises to strengthen my shoulders, my neck. I tend to want to slouch some, and they're trying to help me with that posture correction. I go and see follow-up visits with my ear, nose, and throat doctor. Then I have swallowing issues that are kicking in, so I have to go and see someone to help me there. So it's one doctor. He was a resident or an intern. He said the one thing about throat cancer, it keeps giving and giving and giving. None of it good. They're all other issues that seem to crop up later on. So I do a lot of follow up, and I'm not out of the wood, as far as I'm cancer free, but you're not out of the woods from all the issues that it had created through all the radiation.
I got you. Yeah. Do you ever feel like that is taking your sleep away? Like you're worried that it's gonna come back? Do you ever think about that?
Actually, I don't. I haven't given it one thought. I haven't given it one thought. I feel that if it did come back, then I got to deal with it.
That's awesome.
But until then, I'm not thinking about it.
That's excellent. I think that's super important. You know how many, and I think that has a lot to do with who your personality is, right? Some people is
Right.
you just take it as comes. Some people gets more worried about it and they just think like, the next thing I feel, this is what it is, or I have a little sore throat. Is this coming back or what's happening? So I think it's important to be really vigilant about it, right? You notice something
Yes.
strange, go see your doctor. But at the same time, you can have a sore throat because a cold is coming up. Just kind of let it wait a little bit before you get so alarmed. But if it doesn't go away, then certainly go see the specialist. But I think it's great to have that set of mind because it's just going to help you better for your mental health. So
Yeah, it certainly would. If you let it consume you every day, it's going to wear you down, take its toll.
yeah, yeah, perfect. Michael, that has been so much fun. Thank you so much for doing this and then being part of this show. I really appreciate it.
I hope it helps. It was my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. You have a great rest of the afternoon.
Okay, thanks, Dirty. Bye bye. And you too.
Okay, bye.